Hi, are you looking to increase your knowledge of Amazon's elastic block storage? If so, this video is for you. Please subscribe and hit the bell to be informed of free cloud computing videos every Wednesday. Hi, I'm Mike Gibbs, and I've been in tech for over 25 years. I've worked in networking, I've worked in security, and I've worked in cloud computing. And a lot of what I've been doing recently is teaching cloud computing to students. And one key topic that people really have a hard time is Amazon storage platforms. So today we're going to dive into Amazon's elastic block storage. So to begin our discussion on elastic block storage, let's first define what it is. So Amazon's elastic block storage, often referred to as EBS, is high performance block storage. And it's non-volatile, which means it does not go away when the instance is terminated, which automatically makes it different than instant storage. Because as you would reboot a system on instant storage, you would lose whatever data is there. So if you need to maintain data on a host in the Amazon platform, you're going to be using elastic block storage. So it kind of acts like a virtual hard drive. So you're going to mount this, your computer's going to think it's a hard drive, but in reality, it's a high-speed RAID array that's sitting in an Amazon data center somewhere. And therefore, it can give some extremely good performance. And you're going to use EBS with both EC2 computing instances, but you're also going to use it with your databases on the Amazon cloud. It's extremely scalable. And being block storage, it's very high performance. So what happens with block storage is you take your data, it gets broken up into many little pieces called blocks. Each block has a unique identifier, and it can be stored wherever is most efficient on the storage array. So it's placed there in the most optimal manner, and then you have the identifiers. So when you need the data, you look up the identifiers, and there's your data. So it's very fast. And elastic block storage is very flexible, meaning you can use it with your Windows servers, and you can also use it with your Linux servers. And because they're on RAID arrays and the way they're architected, they're very high availability. 5 nines or 99.999% of the time, it'll be there. So think of your high transactional workloads. That's where you're going to be using EBS. Now, EBS volumes are associated with a single availability zone, so keep that in mind. And because they're high availability, when you back them up, it's going to back it up to a different availability zone. So it's always going to be in a different data center than where you actually were in the first place, which is always a good way to look at things. And you can encrypt these volumes with AES 256, which is very solid encryption, and it's used in a lot of other environments. One thing to note is EBS volumes are backed up via snapshots. So there are backup solutions in place where you do incremental backups, for example, and it looks at file attributes, and your backup tapes or your backup environment has all this information. And you never know exactly what it's going to look like until you try and do a restore. This is completely different. The snapshot is actually a complete image of that entire volume that's going to be placed in a separate availability zone in actually Amazon S3. So you know that when you take that image, if you ever need to, you can reconstitute it into the entire drive, whether that drive houses the operating system or whether it's pure data, but you're going to get exactly what you got. The only thing difference is if you ever need to restore a system or recreate a system from an EBS volume, if the volume wasn't encrypted before, when you take the image and mount it to an instance, it'll be encrypted in that image. But you're going to want to use encryption anyway. Now that you know about elastic block storage, let's talk about the elastic block storage volume types. And there's realistically about 4 types of EBS volumes that you're going to use. And you want to use the correct volume because you want to make sure your applications meet their performance requirements, but you also don't want to overpay if you don't need super low latency. So let's talk about those performance requirements. Now, in performance requirements, we're going to talk about 2 things, both latency and throughput. And since many people get them confused, we're going to really define them. So latency is going to be really determined about the number of input and output operations per second. So IOPS. So the more input and output you can do per second, the less latency. Now that's different than throughput. Throughput is the amount of data that can actually be moved per second. So in certain cases, if you need a very high throughput drive, but you're less sensitive to latency, you can use a throughput optimized option. but you might have a database that needs super low latency, so you really need to know your application requirements. So the first volume we'll talk about is your provisioned IOPS. Amazon refers to it as IO1. Now, this is really high performance SSD storage. In terms of throughput, it's got great throughput, but in terms of input-output operations per second, this is the best you can get on the Amazon platform. And this is designed for really large databases or any highly latency sensitive application. And the throughput's pretty good too, because you're getting about 1,000 megabit a second. So great throughput, low latency. When you need a high performance storage option on Amazon, this is what you're going to use. Now there's another type of SSD based array that you can purchase, and that's called EBS General Purpose SSD, and Amazon calls that GP2. And this is fast SSD storage. And one thing to note about this type of volume, it gives you a really good mix of performance to actual pricing. It's really great if you're going to use it as a boot volume for your server. It's great for storage on the server for things that aren't incredibly latency sensitive. And a lot of times you're going to use this in like a test environment. So let's say you know your application and your database, they're all running on the data center, and they need to be in very low latency environments because they're going to have a lot of work dependent upon them. But in your performance testing environment, you don't have quite as many demands on them, but you still need to roll out new software. By using EBS General Purpose SSD in your lab environment, you can get a lot of the performance similar to what you would get in the provisioned IOPS that you would use in your production environment. But because it can be mounted to instances and it can be booted off of, this is a really good option if you don't want to lose your information when you reboot as you would with instant storage. So now you know about provisioned IOPS and general purpose SSD. Now let's talk about magnetic storage options. So EBS throughput optimized hard drive, which Amazon calls ST1, this is some high throughput magnetic storage. And it's great for frequently accessed workloads that are not latency sensitive. And this is great when there's a lot of data to store, a lot of data that needs to be moved around quite frequently, but super low latency is not required. Log storage is an excellent use for this type of storage. And this type of storage is also good for anything that's got sequential read and writes. So you can get very good throughput and use this for your throughput intensive workloads that are not super latency sensitive. And the last volume type we'll talk about is EBS cold hard drive. And they refer to that as SC1. Now this is really low cost storage. And it's also low performance storage. So you're going to use this for workloads that are not frequently accessed. But it's good to know that you have an option for inexpensive storage that can be mounted to the system for workloads that are not needed that frequently. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can produce more free videos on cloud computing. And please remember, please download the free AWS Certified Solution Architect practice exam. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to giving you another video on cloud computing next Wednesday. Look forward to seeing you soon.